Why, hello.
Hey there. So I realized, putting on a movie for the kids to watch while we podcast, I found John Carter of Mars, which I'm partial to. And what I realized is in the movie, the young gentleman who is going to help John Carter and kind of crack the mystery of what's happened to him happens to be young Edgar Burroughs. So John Carter of Mars is written by Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it
Okay,
was a nice
sorry, I thought
touch.
you were talking about the actor.
No.
Yeah.
Just the young man. I never caught that before. I've watched that movie so many times.
Do you know
I've
if
read the
that
books.
was... I know, because...
It's not in the books.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah. No.
So
If it is, I do
cute.
not recall that for sure. I read I read the first four books.
Good old
And
Pulp
then,
Fiction.
Yeah, by then I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've had enough.
Cliffhanger, the classic, I guess, what was that, the 1800s fiction?
Edgar Rice Burroughs? No. It was I don't know what century, 1920s, 1930s?
Okay, early 1900s.
I would guess, somewhere around there.
Early 20th century.
Yeah, it was when Pulp Fiction started to do its thing. But yeah, I realized that.
Nice.
Yeah. Johnny said, I don't like this movie. I don't want to watch it. I don't like it. And then it started, and he's like, ooh, what's this? Because, there's cowboys and guns, and probably just getting to the aliens by now. But
He'll like the aliens.
yeah.
He's partial to aliens, especially colored ones, cute ones.
Colored
they're-
cute ones?
Yes, green ones that are cute.
Oh.
Tend to be small.
Namely Grogu. That
the
one?
child, yes. He's fairly partial to that alien.
Yeah.
He's a big fan.
Yeah.
And you decided that we would go for a bike ride today.
Yeah.
So we've spent the first part of the morning cleaning. I split one hive into two hives.
Yeah.
So everyone pray for God's will be done, and that maybe it will also be that both of them will survive.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to have a swarm, and so I handled it, but
Yes.
it's the first time I've done this.
So humility, but not at the sake of the bees.
Yeah, I hate it when they die, but it may be.
We'll see.
We'll see. It is the way. And then you thought, let's go for a bike ride. Beautiful day out.
Well, it is Memorial Day, and why not?
Yeah, so we biked over to your mom's, had a visit.
Yep. And then, of course, we had to have 45-mile-an-hour wind gusts
In our face.
on the ride back.
Oh my gosh.
Didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Thanks, Colorado.
That was rough. So yeah, almost all of our kids were like walking their bikes most of the time, which meant it was going to be a long journey home.
Yeah, but we made it.
We did make it.
Now it's
Pat on
time
the
for
back.
podcasts.
It is.
Yeah. Well, I'm Dale,
I'm Kit.
and welcome to Catholic Hitch. We are a Catholic family seeking heaven and hoping to pick up others along the way.
Small talk. You're just trying to expedite this whole thing so you can go back to the couch and have a nap. I figured it out.
Probably.
Yes, 100%.
The thought
I would bet a
crossed
lot
my
of
mind
money.
yesterday, for sure. And I think I told somebody that's what my plan was for today.
Was to go watch a movie and take a nap on the couch.
Yes, while the kids watch the movie.
I found you out, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a busy weekend.
Yeah.
It's Memorial Day weekend. We're a day off of podcasting, and there's a good reason for that.
Yeah, we had some friends that they have decided the next journey in their life for their family is to move way far away. At least it feels that to us. Out to Omaha? No,
Lincoln.
not Lincoln. I always think of Omaha. Like, what else is in Nebraska besides Omaha? Well, Lincoln, duh. So they're moving to Lincoln.
Isn't that the capital? Lincoln, Nebraska?
Lincoln is,
Okay.
yes. But Omaha's the only place in Nebraska I've actually spent time. So that's the only thing I know in Nebraska. So I always think of Omaha.
Okay. Yeah, so they're not going to Omaha. They're going to Lincoln, and we hosted a going away party for them.
Yeah. Kind of, I think they did the Facebook thing and told people, and people showed up, and it was good.
Yeah, it was really nice. We had
Yeah.
a bit of a storm right before, which that put literally a damp on the beginning of the party.
Well, yeah.
And then it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was 85 degrees when I was setting everything up. It was
Yep.
beautiful. And then before not too long, it was 55.
Yeah.
Thanks, Colorado. Again.
And we couldn't podcast Saturday because I wasn't here Saturday.
Yeah.
I came back in the middle of the day Sunday. In fact, like basically an hour before our party was supposed to start, I was back.
Yeah, it all worked out.
and I was at a retreat.
Yeah, of silence.
Well, it wasn't completely silent, yeah, but there's
mostly,
a lot of
right?
silence.
I mean, I've never been on one. I'm
You have
supposedly
not.
need to do one of these. You're too up on me for silent retreats.
There are no men's retreats though. I looked a lot last year trying to find one, and I couldn't find one. Now I'm starting to ask around. I cannot find a men's retreat.
Yeah, I don't know.
There might be couples retreats, but
Well,
I think it's
I'll
different.
have to look, because there used to be a Knights of Columbus silent retreat up at one of the retreat houses up in the mountains. But I haven't seen advertisement for it for a while. I have to go on their website and see if they still do it. I think is it the Jesuits somewhere up in the mountains.
I will refrain from commenting on what would be contained in a Knights of Columbus retreat in our area.
It's basically just a men's retreat for gentlemen who are Knights of Columbus to go.
I know, but the average age, the median age, is definitely over retirement for Knights of Columbus.
It just means it'll be really, really quiet.
Everyone will be sleeping.
No. Maybe some, but it won't be that bad.
I had a great retreat, honey. I'm feeling super well rested.
Hey, since I joined, I'm higher in age, so I'm fitting in a little bit more.
You are. You're not the young pup anymore.
Nope.
Although actually you are. Are they younger than you?
Oh yeah, there's a couple.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'm not the youngest anymore. I mean, I think probably the youngest is, well, we have a couple of squires that went straight into becoming knights. So they're the youngest in, 19, 20-year-olds. But we do have some younger guys with young families. They're in their 30s. So they're the young guys now. I'm just the middle-aged guy.
Great.
Yeah.
Riveting. But yeah, there are no men's retreats.
Yeah.
There is this one women's retreat, and I've enjoyed it 2 years in a row, which I feel extraordinarily blessed and like quite actually indulgent. But it was a good retreat.
Yeah. What's the name of the retreat house? Do you know? It looked like it was.
No.
Is it Presbyterian?
It's a Presbyterian type of retreat house. Yeah. It might be Presbyterian something or other. So there's lots of crosses without the corpus everywhere. Lots of crosses, no corpuses.
Well, that's a good moment of suffering, so.
I mean, they did set up a chapel, and it was appropriately attired, but they had to bring in all of their stuff, of course.
All of the liturgical elements that are not in their chapels.
Yeah, but it's pretty. It's nice to go up to the mountains. It's a good time of year to go up there because everything is really thought out and is coming back to life.
Yeah. Did you see any mule deer?
No, but I saw a bighorn sheep. When I was coming back. It was on the road.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I barely saw it as I was going past. I couldn't figure out why a driver was pulled over, and so I was focused on the driver, and then I saw out of the corner of my eye and then turned that there was a bighorn sheep there, which is
I'm glad
actually,
you saw it.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen a bighorn sheep.
Yeah. I think the bighorn sheep probably would win against a Mini Cooper. It wouldn't live, but the Mini Cooper wouldn't either.
I was like, well, it wasn't on my. I would have seen it if it were in my lane.
Okay,
like,
so it was off on the.
It was on the other side of the road.
It was in the opposing traffic lane.
Yes, it was, and it was honestly in the shoulder.
Oh,
but
okay.
I was focusing on this person that had haphazardly pulled off, and I couldn't figure out what they were doing. It looked like their reverse lights were on. I'm like, what are they trying to do here? I need to go down the mountain, and I'm going down, so I'd prefer to not have to put my brakes on. I'm using our gears to not. Careen down the mountain and
Engine
burn out
braking.
my. Yes. So my attention was appropriately on
where it should be, but most
driver
people
of a car
aren't in the mountains. Because most people that go to the mountains are looking for
wildlife, and I think
stuff,
maybe
yeah.
if I had noticed that that's why the person had pulled off, I would have maybe pulled off too, because it's such a rare sight nowadays.
Is it?
To see a bighorn sheep? Yeah. I don't think it's much easier to see a mule deer.
Yeah.
That's fairly common. And then they keep telling us at the retreat center that there's a moose and a black bear. Or maybe it's a brown bear. I don't know. It's not a grizzly bear, obviously, but it's whatever kind of bear lives in Colorado.
It's a black bear, right?
Yeah, and it's
Little
you just yell at it and it runs the other way.
Yeah, more
it's not
cuddly,
very...
but yet still dangerous.
Well, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't go up to it, you would just yell at it. They're like,
Yeah.
don't just yell at it, make yourself big. And
Yep.
then it usually just
Yo, bear.
runs the other way. And they said that the moose is more dangerous and you have to just reverse and make sure that you're not being stalked by it. So I kept my eyes open when I was hiking a little bit, but I didn't go very far.
Yeah.
It's not like a huge piece of property. So
Oh, really?
nope.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was really nice. And then I came home and you had everything ready to go for a party.
Yes.
And it was a really fun party.
You had a very good checklist for me.
I did. And I did set everything up and I cleaned quite a lot last week before I left. But there was some stuff, it's like I cannot do this that far in advance.
Yeah,
so I had a very specific checklist for you.
We got it all set up, all the outside set up, and I don't know, did a lot.
It's so funny.
Prep.
We have so much seating, but all people ever want to do is stand around awkwardly and talk to each other. And usually they're positioning themselves in front of the food so no one can get
The
to
food and the drink, yes.
I'm like, why? I kept telling
This is
people
what you
to
do
sit
at
down.
parties.
I know. I guess strategic mistake. We need to like distribute the food and the drink around
Yeah,
more.
we'll move it out further. But
yeah, maybe have several different tables around so people have to choose a table to block.
But also, it wasn't like this was our friend group that was coming in.
Yeah.
It was our friend's friend group. And so they're coming from all disparate parts of the metro to our house and never been here before. So they probably felt a little awkward, a little bit more shy about things.
Like, I don't want to sit on this chair. I don't know where this chair has been.
Yes, that's exactly what they were doing.
But yeah, it was fun. It was what, 5-6 hours?
Yeah, something like
event?
that.
Yeah, so I got home from retreat and then was immediately socializing with a lot of strangers. Very weird, but it was good.
Oh,
It was
I enjoyed
fun.
it.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, surprisingly, a lot of the folks that were coming into our house were Catholics themselves.
Yeah.
So that was a nice treat.
They were
wasn't
either
quite expecting
teachers
that.
or they were Catholics.
Yes.
Because of our friends who are teachers and Catholics.
Yes.
So they have, those are their two main worlds. So it's kind of nice to meet people. And it's very easy to talk to teachers of any variety nowadays. All you have to do is say, oh my gosh, what do you think about all of this online learning craziness that you went through? And how did you stay a teacher? And then, it's nice to commiserate with teachers. I'm not trying to be like patronizing in that way, but
No. It's an icebreaker these
it's
days.
almost like, and this is again, probably don't get my metaphor wrong. What I think it compares to is like someone who's gone off to war with someone who's maybe gone off to another part of the war, but they've all been to war and they have that in common now. I feel like that is teachers. Anyone that taught in the last 2 years or 3 years, really, even who
can
taught
commiserate with the fact
prior
of,
to, during shutdown, and then post shutdown with the insanity that was happening, at least to schools in our area, with crazy hybrid learning, and they're teaching kids in person and on screens at the exact same time. And
yeah, everybody had to flex and bend over backwards and
yeah, and
just
so I
do
do like, it's a
crazy
slow
stuff.
clap of true astonishment that anyone would stay a teacher and still be teaching after this horrific year.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's a stereotype, but I feel like if you are a teacher, again, you're doing it because you're called to it.
You better be,
you
at
love
least in our
children,
state.
and
Dang.
you love to do what you're doing because, yeah, you don't get paid well, and it's a brutal job. It's not easy. And it's not like, oh, I've got to deal with 30 kids in my classroom. It's not that. It's everything else that goes along with it. Of you're trying to educate and teach these kids. You're seeing the hardships and struggles that they have in life, and then administration and people above administrations and school boards are doing all kinds of crazy things and constantly changing the curriculum
And to match that, you don't get compensated well, at least in Colorado.
No, and the more education you have, the less you get paid. It's great. Yeah.
I don't know if that's accurate. It's probably, it doesn't make as proportionately beneficial. Like, it's not as proportionally beneficial to get a higher degree in education. Like, it doesn't pay off as much, but I don't think you get like a pay cut if you have gone for your master's.
Maybe that's in Missouri, but
No.
I've had friends in Missouri that are teachers and are like special needs teachers, and they actually got paid less than like the other teachers. because
Well,
of their
okay.
specific niche. So they were very
That's
highly educated.
different than, okay, so what you kind of implied to me was that as soon as a teacher gets a higher degree, they get paid less.
You have to get a higher degree in order to be one of those teachers because you're highly niched.
I know, but so say you're not a special needs teacher and you get a master's degree, you do not get a pay cut. I will bet you anything.
No, you wouldn't get a pay cut if you just go out and get a master's degree.
Okay, because that's what you sounded like you were saying.
Yeah, but you have to have a master's degree in order to teach those kids.
Okay, so I think that actually what you should be saying is that if you have pursued higher levels of education in order to support
special needs
children,
you get paid less.
That there's no good pay in teaching special needs children, and it's really inappropriate, out of balance with the amount of education that's required for these positions for special needs. Okay.
What you said.
Good. We got to common ground here.
Yes, we did.
All right. Well, anything else you want to share about the weekend?
No, I think that's it.
All right.
It's good.
Big talk.
Yep.
And I think we're going to keep it rather short. So.
Or we'll try here.
Yeah, I know.
We'll see. We say that every time.
It's been like a lot of long podcasts this month. I just finished on retreat the Silmarillion.
Yes.
And it was really, actually, it was nice to finish it, but I quite enjoyed reading this.
And you got a nice, beautiful copy that was actually your father's.
Yes. So do you want to read the inscription?
No, since it's probably you should do it.
That's probably right. Yeah, it should be
if it was the other way around, then maybe.
All right. So on October 22nd, 1977, to John, as a small token to remind you of the day we became engaged, love, Karen. So that would be my mom giving this as an engagement gift to my father many, many years ago. So
just a little bit of history there.
And it's funny, if my mom weren't my mom, like if it were my dad, he probably, instead of as a small token, would have been as a small token to remind you of the day we became engaged.
Mm-hmm. Just a little
that's
hobbit.
Not my mom's. That's not my mom's sense of humor. And darn it, I just lost my page.
Well, that's what I do. I just, throw you off your rail. That's half of my job as your husband. Well, but that's cool because this book came out in 1977. So this was like, I don't know if this was one of the first editions or not, but it's a beautiful book. It's hardbound, and they're really hard to find in this like nice quality. As a connoisseur of trying to find hardback books all the time.
Yeah, I've definitely beat up the dust jacket to the extent that I wish I hadn't had the dust jacket on it. But why do they have dust jackets anyway?
To protect the book.
Okay, but the book is made out of like a much stronger material. Like the book wouldn't wear like this. So now I have this ragged dust jacket
I think
with beautiful artwork on it with no... So that's not horrible, actually.
Yeah, I would say probably advertisement is the dust jacket. It's a beautiful thing that you can create. It protects the book, and two, there aren't many people that actually will rebind books these days, so you got to protect them.
All right, from 1970. And anyway, I wanted to talk about this beautiful image, and I read this to you when I read it. Because I thought it was just so fabulous. So the Silmarillion was published posthumously. It was Tolkien's history of the world of the Lord of the Rings. And so it's written like it's a history book. So it's not narrative. There's very little dialogue. It's there are so many characters, it's hard to keep track because, again, it's like a history book. Mm-hmm. And frankly, it's a history of mostly immortal beings, which is like what elves are. Mm-hmm. And then men enter the scene, and those are mortal beings that have lots of progeny, and the heritage of these lines of men, of humans, is like also very important. So who your father or forefather was, makes a big difference in who you are and the qualities that you have and the relationships that you have with the immortal beings, the undying beings. So pretty complicated history to write.
You mean like # Gospel of Matthew?
Yes. Although I think this is easier to read than that first couple paragraphs in the Gospel of Matthew.
Probably, but the back history for that
Yeah,
is
you have
just,
to prepare
it's
yourself.
like a whole book.
Well, and it's so beautiful. It really is. Everyone should read this. And now that I finished it, I kind of want to go right back to the beginning and reread it because I have a better understanding of who some of these characters are and like where they are in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's, it's an epic tale. It's an epic history. And it's, of course, the history before The Lord of the Rings. And there's actually a little bit...
Because it's the world building.
Yes. So it's mostly pre-Lord of the Rings.
Right. It's not only he's building the world and doing this, but it's also it's how the world comes into being so that we can get to the start of The Hobbit and then the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yes. And it does reference, the things that happen in The Lord of the Rings, and then it kind of has almost like a coda at the end of like what happens after The Lord of the Rings, and it mostly relates to, this is kind of like the history of the elves for the most part. There's a little bit of prehistory where it gets into like God, which is Iluvatar. It gets into God's angels, which are the Valar, and minor kind of celestial angels, which is Maiar, and then you have elves created. So when you're reading this, I didn't realize until this part of the book, he has a very specific geography that he's working with. Mm-hmm. And he has maps at the very end that are very beautiful, and they're not the same as the Lord of the Rings map that we're more familiar with.
Right.
But you always talk
a tiny piece.
Yeah, even in this, it talks about the origin of the sun and the moon. And actually, the sun and the moon were not around. The elves came into being under stars. There was no sun and moon. And the way the sun and the moon originally behaved was they didn't follow like east to west. They almost bounced back and forth, like from east to west, west to east, east to west, west to east.
Mm-hmm. Like a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yes, but prettier, more magnificent than Looney Tunes.
Well, yes, I would hope so.
So eventually it gets ordered that the sun and the moon are going from east to west. And west is a very important part of this story because west is the land of the kind of angelic hosts. It's the pure, perfected land, and they kind of rule on behalf of God, all these angelic hosts, and they all have their own little powers, this and that. So I think actually for a lot of people who read Tolkien, you can think like, oh, this is totally pagan, because these angelic beings appear to have like the minor powers of like the gods of antiquity, but they are subservient to Iluvatar, which is again the god of Tolkien's universe.
The big G in the Tolkien
big G
universe.
Single entity. So there isn't a trinity. Of course, there is no Messiah, or there's music, which maybe you could kind of compare to like the Holy Spirit potentially. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the reason we have the Trinity is, of course, Jesus had to come in like bodily form, and that he is the image of God, and that does not happen in Tolkien's mythos. So of course there is not an image of an unimaginable God in his story. So I'm getting a little bit outside of what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, because you could spend we could spend all day trying to break down this mythos here, because there's a lot to it. So
something I wish I had realized when I started reading is the world is flat. Tolkien's world is not a celestial orb. It is a flat universe. So you have east and west, and you have the map, and there isn't you can't just go around. You can't sneak into the west by going east and around the earth, because everything is flat.
Right. Which, coming from the outside, if you're reading that, in our modern context, we're like, that is so archaic, thinking the world is flat. How dumb.
But it's incorporated in such a cool way. Because it wasn't obvious to me that it was a flat world, and it makes a lot more sense when I got to this part of the book. So this is at the almost the very end of the second book of that's contained in the Silmarillion. So the Silmarillion is actually one of the books that is inside this bound edition. Like, it's named for the Silmarillion because I think that's the most epic part of this story. Mm-hmm. But there's other little sections. So this is from the Akalabeth. And the Akalabeth really deals with the Númenóreans, which are like the highest race of human beings. And they live in an island that's separate from Middle Earth, that's close to the west, but is not in the west because they're prohibited. There's a ban that prevents them from going into the west, into the land of the Valar. Because frankly, they are mortal beings, and coming into an eternal land has like a very real consequence to their bodies. So in a way, the ban is there to protect the Númenóreans from what would happen to them if they touched the eternal world of the Valar, Valinor. But anyway, bad things happen. There's a devil in this story. His name's Melkor. And then when Melkor is destroyed, Sauron, who we're all familiar with, Sauron was like a lieutenant of Melkor, who was the devil. So it's funny that Sauron, he looks like the devil in The Lord of the Rings. He was actually a more minor figure when it comes to like the epic powers of this thing.
Yeah.
He's a Maiar. So Sauron devises the downfall of these people. He infiltrates them. He convinces them that they should actually lead a raid against the Valar. And he actually convinces them to start worshiping Melkor, which is, again, the devil. He, completely twists their theology. And there's a schism in their society where, the people who are faithful to the Valar and the angelic beings that operate according to the will of Ilúvatar, there's a schism between the sects that still, want to hold true to their values of the society and follow God, and the people who have completely gone off the rails in worshiping Melkor. Anyways, aside. So they decide they're going to actually go do a raid against the Valar. They're going to sail west. They're going to ignore the ban, and they're going to go attack the Valar. So they build all these ships, and they put all of their people in the ships, all the men, and they leave behind their women and children on the island of Númenor. And they go on off to the west, and they actually make it to, I think, the very beginnings of the Western lands. And at this part in the story, Tolkien describes that the Valar, who they kind of rule the world, they have very specific powers to rule the world with. The Valar actually, they kind of hold their hands up and they resign their ownership and authorship of the world to Ilúvatar. So they kind of take a step back. And Ilúvatar steps in because he's going to say, no, you are violating the ban. The Valar have ruled the world, according to my will, and you're disobeying my will. So it talks about how Ilúvatar creates this massive chasm, a huge crack in the earth. And it actually swallows all of the fleets, and it swallows all of these, including Númenor and these other islands. They get swallowed up in this crevice. And then what happens to the world is bent. So what is happening in that description? It's like suddenly you're going from a flat thing and you're having to take this flat map and you're having to make it into a sphere. And anyone that's dealt with geography knows that there's a problem trying to, project our 3-dimensional spherical world onto a 2-dimensional piece of paper. There's going to be some destruction or some distortion. So the reverse is happening in this universe. The god, Ilúvatar, is taking a flat world and he is curving it around into a sphere. And the destruction that flows from that act creates this giant crevice that's swallowing everything. Things are just completely wiped away. They're off the map because they had to be sacrificed in, turning this 3-dimensional thing, or this 2-dimensional thing into a 3-dimensional thing. Darn it. And so I say all this because in the end, the fleet is gone. The good Númenóreans escape, and they're in Middle Earth now. But now the world is a sphere, and the Western lands are no longer accessible, because they're not a part of the world anymore. The world has been bent away. So if you sail west, you're going to actually end up in the east, which is, of course, the way that we see the reality of our world. And that's the way it is. You just sail west until you get east, or east until you get west.
Right, the loop.
And then this is the catch, and this is why I wanted to talk about this today. So there is a call for the elven folk to go west. That is their ultimate purpose, is they can reside in Middle Earth, and they have the choice of whether they stay in Middle Earth or they go west. And west is their home. That's where they belong. And for them, if they go to sail west, there is a way for them to get to the western land. And instead of following the bend, they like sail true straight into the eternal lands. So it's like if you're walking off it, you can see like the horizon is collapsing underneath us in our vision. And they would be sailing a ship like practically into the sky is the way that it would look, because they would be traversing in a straight line instead of a bent line.
Mm-hmm.
What does that kind of sound like?
That's the Ascension.
It's an image of the Ascension. And obviously we don't know what happened, but isn't that a lovely way to think about Jesus? He left the world to go to a place that is even more infused within our world, where he is everywhere in all things. And so it's kind of funny, we always talk about him rising up, and that's the imagery, is he's like being lifted into the clouds. But I feel like I've seen this in a movie, that he was portrayed as walking off into the sky, like as if it were a flat horizon, but he just kind of kept walking. And that's the image that Tolkien presents as an image of the Ascension. Yeah. Is that Jesus just starts walking, and he's walking into a different world. Right. And so he looks as if he's floating, but he's just going somewhere else.
But it's a world that's not accessible to us.
Yeah, not in our mortal forms. No. And he went to prepare a place for us. So he went somewhere that we cannot go, we cannot follow. Right. Just like everyone else in Tolkien's world, all the mortal men, they cannot go into the West. They're not allowed. And isn't that okay? So at the very end of the Lord of the Rings, what happens?
So Frodo and Bilbo and the elves end up going and sailing west.
Yes. So now they weren't just going off to like a cool island on Earth. They were about to sail into this other dimension that's inaccessible to Earth.
Yeah, and a heavenly place.
And it's only for the elves. It is their place that's been set apart. And that's why it was so profound that Frodo and Bilbo were invited to go with them. And it was in recognition of what those two people, or I guess hobbits, did for all of humanity, that they were allowed to be admitted. And there was actually one other mortal man that was allowed there because of his own personal sacrifice. He was allowed to go to Valinor. So it's very exclusive. So it's in recognition for great feasts and for high, high, high virtue.
Great feats.
Feats. That's what I thought I said.
It sounded like feasts.
Oh, I must have dyslexified my tongue there.
It's
if that's
okay.
What I said.
I was starting to think feats. Valhalla for a second. I'm like, great feasts.
Great feasts in Valhalla. But anyway, I thought that was really cool, and I wanted to talk about it around the Ascension, and we talked for way too long because I geeked out about the Silmarillion.
No, I think really cool. You kind of have to know at least that minimal amount of information to understand what you're talking about.
And I'd say I did not spoil anything. Because this is the history of the Lord of the Rings. At least if you've read the Lord of the Rings, you kind of know. Yeah. And it's not a normal story. It's a history. So if you've read the Lord of the Rings, you're going to recognize a lot of the themes, especially from the movies, because they draw very heavily in the movies from a lot of this history.
And the other thing that's happening now, they're doing, I think, this, using this to build this new mini-series that they're doing. Is on Netflix or somebody's doing it.
Or I've seen articles that it's somewhere.
We'll let other people watch it and tell us whether it's actually worth watching, because who knows?
I mean, I guess
current world, but
I'm not. If it's Netflix, we won't be able to watch it anyway, because we're one of 3 people on Earth that doesn't have a Netflix account right now.
Apparently,
We've never had Netflix.
No, we never have. And the only thing I've wanted was Stranger Things,
which we get on DVD.
Yeah, but you can't now. They didn't do the last series, but I should check Target and see if they've got it now.
Yeah, I guess I don't care enough to subscribe to Netflix for that, and I probably don't enough for the Lord of the Rings either. No. But if it's accessible to us, I ought to watch it now, only because of having read this, and it's really fresh in my mind.
Yeah, and you can cross-compare.
Yeah, I can kind of know, they're drawing from this. Oh, I don't know if I like that. They don't get into the the dwarves very much in this at all. There's a little bit, but it's not it's really the history of the elves, the elven race. There's a little bit of the men as well, but that's really the focus is like the elves.
And then honestly, now that you read this, you can read the next book, the Children of
Here. And they're in here, but obviously it's not a narrative, so I'm actually curious because it's like dark.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I should
and
read it.
The son wrote that one, right?
Yeah, Christopher Tolkien.
Yeah.
I would have rather he write about Luthien and
interesting.
Beren.
Well, now that you know more,
yeah,
you'll have to let us know on that.
It's like the Children of Huron, I think, is like the I don't think foil is the right term. It's like they are a dark image of this other famous couple from the Silmarillion, which is Beren and Luthien. So we better stop this.
Yeah, so we'll leave it at that before the PC dies here. Let us know what you think. CatholicHitch@gmail.com. May the Lord guide and direct our journey.
Amen.
I didn't know you didn't have it plugged in.
No, I didn't.